Good evening. My name is Lori Ross, and this evening I will be presenting to you my guided reading project. This is for FCSC 3650, March the 8th, 2017. So let's get started. So here I have included an index, ABC, so it'll be easier to kind of break down and read throughout the slideshow. For instance, when you click on Understanding Guided Reading, it'll take you to that section. Okay, so here are my sections. What is guided reading and what is its purpose? Why is guided reading important? When are children ready for guided reading? How do teachers match books to readers for guided reading lessons? What are level books and how do teachers determine what level each group should read? What is a procedure for implementing a guided reading lesson? Part B. How many students should be in a guided reading group and how long should the lessons be? How do you determine who's in what group? In other words, what type of assessments can be used to determine the members of each group? Explain. How do you know when to regroup or to move individual students to other groups? In terms of scheduling guided reading lessons, how do you organize literacy block? In other words, how much time is allotted for guided reading as a whole, and what do the other students do while you are teaching guided reading groups? And finally, part C, how has this assignment for how has this assignment expanded your understanding of how to differentiate reading instruction for the various readers in your kindergarten class? What questions do you have about guided reading that was not answered in your research, and what ways will you be able to increase your understanding of how to implement guided reading? In other words, what kind of materials, resources, workshops, or seminars, organizations, conferences, or local experience are available to you? So let's get started. Understanding guided reading. What is guided reading and what is its purpose? So, guided reading is the instructional approach that involves a teacher working with a small group of students who demonstrate similar reading behaviors and can all read similar levels of text. The purpose of this, you say? Students can understand and enjoy stories because it's accessible to them through their own strategies, supported by the teacher's instruction. So basically, guided reading is a method that teachers use for their students in the classroom. This this approach offers teachers one-on-one time with small groups who have similar challenges with reading, and it offers teachers and it offers them a good amount of time to reflect on or modify certain reading instruction in the classroom. Why is guided reading important? Well, the overall goal of guided reading is to independently read, and it gives children a chance to apply strategies that they already know. So that's the overall goal, to have children eventually read on their own. When are children ready for guided reading? So the teacher will observe children during read aloud times and look for specific behaviors. And this will determine how the teacher will know when to basically assess which child. You look for children's interest in learning to read and their attention span. Watch for children who can generate ideas related to the class discussion and children who can stay on topic. Most importantly, though, be sensitive to children's needs and their readiness and interest to be part of a small group, handling a book and telling a story. How do teachers match books to readers for guiding reading lessons? Well, the teacher selects the text for a small group of students who are similar in their reading behaviors at a particular point in time. Matching books to readers depends on knowing the reader, their interests, skills, stamina, willingness to take risks, knowing the text, supportive text features and challenges, understanding the reading process, 3 cueing systems of making meaning. What are level books and how do teachers determine what level each group should read? So there are 3 categories of books. You have easy text, independent reading level, and this can be read with about 96% to 100% accuracy. Just right text. Instructional level can be rated with about 90 to 95% accuracy, and hard frustration level below 89% reading accuracy. And books for guided reading are generally just right text. So basically, you kind of want to, as a teacher, you want to just find a clear balance, because you don't want to have your, you want to have you don't want to have it too easy to the point where they're not being challenged at all, but you don't want to have it too hard to the point where it's just completely over their heads and they just can't grasp the concept. So you want to have something that's appropriately challenged enough to have children think, to just use those thinking skills and to push forth their best effort to eventually read on their own. What is the procedure for implementing a guided reading lesson? So here are the procedures. The teacher works with a small group of students with similar needs. The teacher then provides instructions to the text that support children's later attempts at problem solving. Each student reads the whole text or a unified part of the text. Readers figure out new words while reading for meaning. The teacher's prompts, encourages, and confirms students' attempts at problem solving. The teacher and student engage in meaningful conversations about what they are reading. The teacher and student revisit the text to demonstrate and use a range of comprehension strategies. So that there are the many strategies to use while implementing a guided reading lesson. Here we have organizing the guided reading classroom, Part B. So, how many students should be in a guided reading group, and how long should the lessons be? Well, how many you say? The teachers meet with 1 or 2 small groups a day, and to reminder, you might want to keep these groups small because, it just it just allows more concentrated instruction for that particular group. So in per classroom, there's a good chance that not all students are going to be reading at the same pace as others. So when you break it down, you allow time to meet with each group and to focus on that one thing that they can build as strength for themselves. How long? Guided reading groups should be about 15 to 20 minutes long. How do you determine who is in what group? In other words, what type of assessments can be used to determine the members of each group? So the best way to determine a student's grouping would be to group by their needs. For instance, plan a group for those who may be struggling with comprehension or vowel sounds. You know, as I said before previously, not every student learns at the same pace. So each student is going to have a varying amount of need, and by that need, you group them in different groups. The use of formative assessment that checks for understanding for each student while they're learning. So if I had to pick an assessment that was closely related with this, I would probably say it was formative assessment. And this checks for understanding with the classroom while they're learning, while they're in the progress, instead of versus summative assessment, where you check for understanding towards the end of a unit or the end of a guided reading session. So, and I feel that this is a very effective way in assessing children and their knowledge of how much they actually understand. During guided reading, the teacher is constantly asking questions for comprehension and observing certain behaviors. How do you know when to regroup or to move individual students to other groups? So, groups should change daily so that the students have a chance to work on all areas of their reading. Allow rotation of centers so that children also have independent practice. Also, the teacher should regroup students based on mastery. When a student has become more skilled in a particular literacy area, then they should be regrouped to another group that the teacher may have noticed the student may need more practice with. In terms of scheduling guided reading lessons, how do you organize your literacy block? Or in other words, how much time is allotted for guided reading as a whole, and what do the other students do while you're teaching guided reading groups? So the literacy blocks should be 4 to 5 times a week. It includes 1 to 2 small groups meeting each day. Independent reading should last 30 to 45 minutes, while guided reading groups should last 15 to 20 minutes. While a teacher is participating in a guided reading with a small group, the other students should be in a designated center. And finally, analyzing and reflecting on your learning experience. And this is where I as this says, analyze and reflect on my research of this guided reading project. So how has this assignment expanded your understanding of how to differentiate reading instruction for the various readers in your kindergarten class? This assignment has helped me understand that not all children read at the same pace, and that guided reading programs are handy when designing specific instruction. The research of the different ways of breaking down guided reading, such as word study, interactive read aloud, and shared reading, children will have more than one way to learn important material. What questions do you have about guided reading that was not answered in your research? So while I was researching this topic, I was curious about ESL students, and though this was covered in one of the research articles that we had to read, I kind of have more questions about it, such as are there any different specific steps of conducting a guided reading with ESL students? Do you have to modify anything? Should there be and translator conducting this guided reading, things such as that. So just basically the specifics of doing a guided reading program with ESL students. I will be interested in learning more about that. So in what ways will you be able to increase your understanding of how to implement guided reading? In other words, what kinds of materials, resources, workshops, or seminars, organizations, conferences, or local experiences are available to you? Well, I found the website. On this website called Heinemann, dedicated to teachers, this website offered many resources to professionals on the enrichment of guided reading strategy. And it offered webinars as well. These webinars are, it's just, they're 75 minutes long or 4:30 p.m. from 5:45 p.m. And it's a series where it's designed to allow participants to explore the assessment, analysis, and use of level text to teach, prompt, and reinforce strategic action in guided reading lessons. This seemed pretty handy to me. It seemed this webinar looked really interesting, and this website breaks it down by they group it by grade level. So the one I found was for the primary grades or from K through the second grade. And this dealt more with the early childhood age. And I would be actually interested in attending one of these webinars pretty soon. They're offered pretty soon. It starts April the 6th through April the 27th. And I have included in my PowerPoint here, my presentation. If you look to your left, the bottom left, it includes the different dates that each webinar is hosted. And one thing I also read about this webinar is that the professionals who host it, they invite other professionals of this of this guided reading field. You know, they invite professionals in this field to who can elaborate more about who have done thorough research about the guided reading program to elaborate more and answer any questions that anyone in the audience may have. So I kind of like that aspect, how they bring in, other outside sources to further our understanding in this particular area. This is overall has been a pleasant project to do, and I actually really enjoyed reading about and researching about guided reading. But other than that, this concludes my presentation. I hope you have enjoyed watching this as much as I enjoyed conducting this project. So thank you and have a great evening.